Chapter 12. Vincent. "You know, you did not have to follow me to my room," I told Raella as she closed the door behind her. "I'm aware of that," she said with a smile as she placed her hand on her hip. "Does it worry you, Vincent?" she asked softly, making her way over to me. "What do you mean?" I asked, looking down at her as she came to stand before me. She just responded with a soft chuckle and the shake of her head. "What?" I asked. What was so funny about my response? What did I have to worry about? She then reached out, placing her warm palm against my cheek. This sent a warm sensation spreading across my face. Was I embarrassed? I wasn't sure why I seemed to get so nervous. The pounding of my heart in my ears cut off the sound of my breath hitching. "Judging by your reaction, this is not something you're used to," Raella chuckled softly. I looked away from her quickly before I was drawn into those green eyes of hers. "Well, I usually do not let girls touch me. I just don't understand why you seem so interested in me," I mumbled. It was true, I was confused. I did not like to be touched. But this woman, she broke all of my rules. She was not scared to get close to me or challenge me. It was irritating, and yet I found myself wanting her presence. "Is that so? I know you already. My mother is a very powerful seer. She saw all of us together, you and I, more so than the others. She saw your soul in her vision, and it's a perfect match to mine." She moved her hand away slowly. Without thinking, I grabbed her wrist and turned my gaze back to her. I wasn't sure what to make of her story. I knew the reputation of her family, and I did feel an odd sort of connection with Raella, but how could I just accept her words as facts so soon? "But if it's you, I might be able to get used to it," I said, surprising myself, slowly placing her hand back. "Ah, I see. I knew it. I know it's a little hard to accept, me just being so comfortable with you, but I've been searching for you for years," she smirked. I looked away again, this time catching figures just outside my dark window. "What is going on out there?" I asked aloud. I headed closer to the window, peeking out. 3 shadowy figures moved through the darkness. I sensed no danger, but I was curious. Raella stood beside me, her hand sliding up my arm. I shivered, but tried to hide it by coughing and looking away. "It's Oliver, Melissa, and Colt sneaking out like bad little kittens," she informed me. "Interesting," I mumbled, watching them disappear. I'd keep this to myself for now. "Mel, this is a terrible idea," Oliver whispered to me as we left the house. We went on foot, hoping to catch a bus or take a taxi. We wanted to avoid anyone seeing a car missing from the driveway. We may have been full-grown adults, but it didn't excuse the dangerous thing that attacked us the other night. "Oliver, obviously you've been having mixed feelings since you stepped foot outside the house, but just trust me. Something isn't right about him," I told Oliver as I looked to see his unsure expression. "He's just nervous your sister will be angry when she finds out about this," Colt chimed in from my other side. "She's not going to find out. Don't try to scare him like that," I hissed, turning my eyes to Colt. I still didn't quite understand why he bothered coming. He could care less about Cece's strange boyfriend. "So how do we plan to find this guy anyway?" Colt asked. "Overheard Cece talking about how he was working late at the hospital," I explained. "So we're gonna go stalk him from there?" "It's not stalking, Colt. I told you. He's not right," I defended. Once we were far enough away from the house, we called a taxi to pick us up. I gave the taxi an address about a block away from the hospital. We arrived at our destination and walked the rest of the way until we got to the mostly empty parking lot. "Which car do you think is his?" Colt asked. "Maybe he's already gone," Oliver said. I shook my head at the two as I began walking ahead of them. "Only one way to find out. Let's go inside," I told the two. "What? He'll definitely see us," Oliver hissed as he caught up to me. "Yeah, but we could be waiting outside for hours," Colt told Oliver. Before we could get too close, the front doors opened, and there stood Mr. Perfect himself. "Shit," I whispered, before yanking the other two by their arms and pulling them behind a parked car. We all peeked out, watching Noah as he left the parking lot on foot. "Did he not bring his car?" Oliver asked. "How would I know? That alone is weird enough, right?" I asked the two. Maybe he's getting in some late-night exercise," Colt teased. I rolled my eyes before following after Noah as he rounded the corner. The guys did their best to keep up. Noah walked ahead in the dark, his hands in the pockets of his suit pants. Just where was he going? We first followed him down to an old building. He stopped there and knocked on the door. A beautiful, dark-haired woman emerged and smiled, giving him a hug. "See," I whispered. "He's cheating." "That's not okay," Oliver mumbled, his eyes dark now. We kept our distance, but we were close enough to hear the conversation. "Noah, thank you for stopping by," the woman said cheerfully. "It's not a problem. You were right down the road, so I thought I'd just deliver this medicine myself for little Claire," Noah said, pulling a small paper bag out of his pocket. The woman smiled, taking it. "Oh, thank you so much. You didn't have to do that." "Well, I know it's hard for you to get around when it's just you and your sick daughter," Noah said. "It really is. Thank you so much." I looked away as Oliver nudged me. "Looks like he's just being friendly and helping out a patient to me. This shows we can't just jump to conclusions," my best friend mumbled. "Well, you'll see. I know I'm right," I shot back. Noah eventually said his goodbyes and we continued to follow. He walked along the empty sidewalk, making more stops. He stopped to check on some patients who lived close by and even picked up some trash off the ground. He stopped in a small store to pick up some things and gave the store owner a tip. He was cheerful and friendly to anyone he came across, even animals. After about an hour he rounded another corner and Oliver caught my shoulder. "This is getting annoying, Mel," Oliver said, pulling me back. "I know it's been like an hour and nothing is happening," I mumbled before looking at him. "That means he's clean and you have to let this go." "No, Oliver, I trust my gut. He's not right. I know it," I defended. "Let's just call it a night," Cole replied, putting his arm around my shoulder. "It's over. We got nothing," Oliver mumbled, turning away. I pushed Colt's arm off and sighed as the two guys led the way back. I just couldn't believe it. There was no way this was over. As we walked back, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I froze, seeing an alleyway on my left side. We had passed it earlier and I didn't get this feeling before. "Mel," a voice whispered into my ear. I turned my head towards the alley. A dark figure stood there watching me. It smirked, tilting its head. "The girl who cried wolf. What a joke." The figure laughed. It was built like Noah, and its voice sounded similar. It was darker, but still the same. The figure began walking towards me. As it came closer, I could see his face. It was deformed, but I would know that face anywhere. His teeth were sharp, and his eyes were intelligent. He was taunting me. I could still hear the whispers as he came closer, and I couldn't move my legs. "Oliver! Colt!" I shouted to them. They both came rushing. "He's back! He knew we were following him, and he came back," I explained, pointing down the now empty alleyway. Both guys looked down the alley. "Are you sure?" Oliver asked. "Yes, I saw him. He's there. He's waiting for us to turn our backs," I hissed. "I don't see anything, Mel." "I'm not lying. Colt, tell me you sense it," I asked, looking to him. Maybe he believed me. Colt was quiet before he shook his head. "I'm serious, guys. I saw him. He looked distorted, but it was him," I defended. "Look, if it will make you feel better, we'll check," Colt said with a concerned smile. With that, we all searched the alley. The figure was gone, and so was that cold chill. What was going on? I wasn't crazy. I know I saw it. "This is a waste of time," Oliver grumbled as we left the alley. "Oliver, I did see him. He's a creep and a monster. We have to save Cece from him," I told Oliver, placing my hand on his shoulder. Oliver shoved me away, shaking his head. "No, Mel. Face facts. Cece isn't you. Don't put some image on an innocent guy when you have no proof besides your weird feelings," Oliver growled. "You know I'm right." "Why? Because your gut says so?" "Grow up, Mel. This is your sister's private life, her happiness. Stop projecting your mistakes on her," he shot back. "I'm not. He cut me off, raising his hand. Enough. Look, I'm going back. This is dangerous, and we shouldn't have done it. Pull yourself together, and then we can talk." Oliver stormed off ahead of us. I sighed and sat down on the sidewalk, my head in my hands. "Colt, am I crazy? Did you guys really not feel it?" I asked. "I hate to say it, sweetheart, but you've lost it. I think you're getting too consumed by this whole mess," he told me as he sat beside me. "Wow, even you're against me? I must really be losing it," I mumbled. "I'm not against you. I never will be. I just don't think you're thinking rationally." "What would you know about rational?" I growled at him. "So what was Oliver trying to say earlier?" he said, ignoring my growl. "I don't want to talk about it with you," I hissed, turning my glare on him. The thought of discussing my past made me sick. "Look, you don't scare me, babe. So do me a favor and just tell me. I want to know. I want to understand you," Colt explained. He reached out, placing a hand on my cheek. He kept looking me in the eyes. A feeling bubbled up in my stomach, so I looked away. "I was in a few bad relationships, okay? They all start off nice, and then it changes. If it seems too good to be true, it normally is," I said, pushing his hand away. I turned to avoid his endless dark brown eyes. "I see," Colt said. I worry for Cece. She doesn't deserve to be mistreated. She seems so nice, and she seems so happy. That scares me the most. We know nothing about this guy, and he swoops in on my sister. He's good at everything, and he spoils her? It doesn't feel right in my gut." "It sounds to me like you might be jealous," Colt replied. I rolled my eyes, running my fingers through my hair. "I'm not jealous." "Mm-hmm," he chuckled, as if he didn't believe me. "I'm not. I don't care if she's the favorite, or that she gets all the luck. I don't care that she's smart, pretty, or even more mature than me. Why would that matter?" I shouted at him, keeping my back to him. "Bingo. The thing is, you do care," Colt whispered, wrapping his arms around me. He pulled me close, my back pressed against his chest and his chin on my shoulder. "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" I growled, trying to push him away. "Comforting you," he replied, keeping his hold. At some point, struggling became pointless, and I stopped. I let him hold me, and I let my feelings consume me. I was jealous of Cece. She was such a bright light, and I could never be anything like her. Even she could find the perfect guy with no flaws, while I struggled against my own feelings. Tonight, did I just see what I wanted to see? Was all this really getting to me? Was I scared and bringing everyone there with me? I wasn't sure. One thing I was sure of, though. Right now, I felt empty and weak, like I had lost a battle. Warm, salty tears slipped down my cheeks as I placed my hands over Colt's arms. At least I wasn't alone. "Colt." I held Mel close until her crying ceased. I caressed her platinum hair and just did everything I could to comfort her. Once it started to drizzle, we stood up and started walking back to the hospital. Oliver had probably a 20-minute head start on us, so I assumed he had already gotten a cab. He was so angry with Mel, I doubt he would wait for us. Mel didn't say a word on our cab ride home. It was pitch black in the house when we finally walked in. We made sure to lock the door behind us. Better safe than sorry. "Night, babe." I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Wait," she called as I began to walk towards the guest rooms. "Stay with me tonight?" she asked tentatively. I took her hand and let her lead me up to her messy bedroom. We kicked off our shoes, and she went to the bathroom to change into pajamas. I just pulled off my jeans. Boxers were normal sleeping attire for me. When she came back in and saw me already in her bed, her cheeks turned bright red. She hesitated before slipping under the covers next to me. "Are you not wearing pants?" she accused. "Ew, who wears jeans to bed?" I replied. Goosebumps broke out all over her skin, so I pulled the blankets around her, tucking her in. "Stop that. You like having someone taking care of you," I teased, but wrapped my arms around her. She rolled over to face me, and I felt her hand slip up to my cheek. My eyes had adjusted well enough that I could see her in this darkness. To my genuine surprise, she leaned closer to me, closing her eyes. I realized instantly she was expecting me to kiss her. She was so vulnerable right now. As badly as I wanted to feel her soft lips on mine, I knew it wouldn't be right to take advantage of her. So I leaned in and touched my lips to her forehead. She pulled back, shock in her icy eyes. "Why?" "I like you," I whispered to her simply. "I know, I just don't understand why." Her gaze slipped away from me. "You wouldn't believe me even if I told you. You've given me more reasons than I can count. Just go to bed." She turned back over to her other side, and I was content to hold her like that all night.